Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root, where we dive deep into understanding and addressing root causes of chronic health issues so you can help and find healing inside and out, now and forever.
Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root. I'm Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice at Trifecta Collective. Welcome to the podcast. So today I want to talk about what does it actually look like working with a functional health practitioner? What does that look like? And I want to share this from my personal experiences because I've worked with quite a few functional health practitioners as a client or patient. And then I also want to talk about some of the reasons as to why we operate just a little bit differently than a lot of these other practices. Now, I do want to acknowledge first and foremost, I don't think there's a perfectly right or wrong way to do any of this work. I think a lot of it depends on what are you looking for? What kind of issues are you dealing with? How long have you been dealing with these issues? Where are you right now kind of in your overall health and wellness practices, I think is the best way to put that piece. And what are you really looking to get out of this? And I think the answer to a lot of those questions is going to depend on what are the best options for you? What kind of practitioner do you want to work with? Do you want to work with someone who prescribes, someone who doesn't prescribe, someone who looks at kind of everything, someone who relies pretty heavily on testing, someone who does a lot of work with supplements, someone who does a lot of work on therapeutic, I'm going to call them therapeutic diets for right now. Someone who primarily focuses on the nervous system piece, someone who looks at all of these things all together, someone who is very intensive in the work that they do, meaning that they have a lot of specific rules and ways that they practice. Someone who's a little bit more open and flexible in the way that they work. Someone who is looking more long term, someone who is looking more short term at an acute fixing or addressing or supporting a specific more acute kind of issue. Someone who is just looking to help you optimize, someone who is looking to help biohack, someone who has an in-person practice versus a virtual kind of practice. There are so many factors that go into choosing the right person to work with. And as a woman who was in her later 20s when I started all of this, and I started in the Western medicine space to ideally help fix my chronic pain kind of issues that then turned into a whole bunch of other things going on inside of my body. And I spent so much time, so much money, so much energy, so many resources in my own healing journey. And I hear this from other people too, by the way. I mean, we've worked with well over 1,000 people in this practice alone in a little over 6 years. That doesn't include all of the personal training clients that I worked with for let's see, what was it? Over 5 years before I started this, or right around 5 years before I started this. This doesn't include I've tried so many biohacking things, so many different types of practitioners more so in just the nervous system space and different places there and bioresonance. And I have done so many biohacking kind of things, which is a big reason why we don't do a lot of those biohacking things. And I've been on all kinds of restrictive diets. We've had people work with us from homeopathic individuals who work with primarily homeopathic kind of remedies. I've personally worked with an acupuncturist for well over a year on both the acupuncture side, but also the more of like supplemental herbal Chinese medicine side of things. So I love to share information, and I always say knowledge is power. And once again, I just want to talk about some of the really common practices that I have seen, continue to see, and just things to think about when you are trying to make this decision, because the pricing, especially, I mean, let's not talk about anything else other than just pricing right now. Pricing of this stuff can get really high really fast. I mean, I mean, I stopped counting after 50,000. Yeah. And I don't come from money. I'm not a extremely wealthy individual. Like none of, I really went out of my way to find resources, and I did whatever I had to do to really help and support my own body and my own health and wellness experience. And I think that's very much worth acknowledging those facts, because I also know a lot of other people also have spent a lot of money, have really gone out of their way to find different ways to finance their healing journey, and made so many changes and so many things. And it can be really, really frustrating when you put all of this time, all of this money, all of this energy into your healing, and you're not healing, or seemingly like you're not healing. And I'll tell you, I regret working with any single practitioner? I really don't. And I say that with a little bit of hesitation, because there is one person I think about that maybe maybe I probably shouldn't have worked with her. I did learn a good bit from her, but I do think she really took a toll on my mental and emotional health. And there were some red flags early on that I chose to ignore because of her specific credentials. And I probably shouldn't have. Not that she made me feel worse, but there was a lot of, oh, this is just in your head, and this is all you need to do, and oh no, you don't need to worry about that, and just a variety of things that I'm like, I probably should not have worked with her. And I'll say, like, she actually wasn't even on the more holistic health side. She was more on the physical side. She was a personal trainer and physical therapist with a strength and conditioning specific background, and I was really trying to get back into lifting. And I was really struggling to do that on my own at that point in time, and I felt like I needed additional support. And I was hoping her level of expertise would really help me with that. And once again, there was just a variety of things that she said or did or did not do that I think really impacted my mental and emotional health. Anyways, okay. So what does it look like? What does this often look like? So let's start at the very beginning. Most practices do some sort of free call of some sort. For us, we do that via Zoom. We don't do like actual phone calls. Some practices do actual phone calls. Some people will do, actual videos. Some people you don't do that. I'll say from what I've seen, most do. Even if it's a quick 10 or 15-minute introductory kind of phone call. Because of the work that we do free 30-minute. I don't foresee that changing in the near future. Of course, at any point in time, it could change, and we may change our minds. I may change my mind about how we do that. But for right now, there's so much value in those 30-minute free consults, and a lot of them, some are valuable, some aren't. I've had plenty of anywhere between 10 to 30-minute kind of consults that have been extremely valuable, and plenty that have been pretty worthless. And with us, we try to provide a lot of value, especially if you've sent a lot of labs into us beforehand. And if you've had a consult with me, yeah, I mean, even if you decide not to work with us, the amount of value that we try and provide is incredibly high. We'll go over your labs. We try and do a pretty deep dive, or as much as we can at least, in 30 minutes into symptoms, kind of like the health history, how you got here, and then try and come up with some next steps, whether that's working with us, whether that's a few just simple recommendations, or whether that's some testing that we think is necessary or important, especially if you're going to work with us, some testing that we'd like to see. It can really go a long way, and it can go a variety of different routes. And I'll tell you, we don't pitch to everyone to work with us as a client. We also don't pitch packages to everyone that we work with for a variety of reasons. And those reasons can vary quite a bit. Maybe someone's not ready. If they're very new into the functional medicine space, often they are not ready for us right away, in which case, hey, we've got some free master classes, check out our podcast, look at some other things. Here are some, things that came up between labs and symptoms, maybe some shifts nutritionally or lifestyle things, different things like that may feel supportive. Once again, for a lot of these practices, it's to answer any of your specific questions about working with them. You'll also notice if you've ever gone to our website, we don't share what our packages are. And that's on purpose. That's very intentional. Our new website will have a little bit more information than we currently have on it on our current website. And it does vary quite a bit person to person. Sometimes we'll do 3 months, sometimes we'll do 6 months, sometimes we do a month-to-month kind of thing. Sometimes we more recommend just kind of a one-off kind of meeting with us or just a few meetings that may be spaced out over time. There's a lot of different ways to work with us. And so I am always hesitant to be like, these are the only ways to work with us, or these are your choices, just pick one. Because sometimes people don't pick the best one for them. And that's really where we're kind of trying to figure out during that initial consult, where is someone landing? What are their bigger root causes? Like, what kind of time frame are we kind of looking at? What kind of bigger work do we need to do? We're not going to get into the super nitty gritty, and that's going to vary a lot person to person. But big picture, there's only a few major root causes that we're really looking at. And so our goal is to kind of start to navigate and either rule in or rule out some different things, which once again, I do think sets us apart and was really important for me in building this practice and designing value up front. Because even if someone's not the right fit for us, I want them ideally leaving feeling pretty good. Are we perfect? No. I get plenty of people who do not agree with me, who do not agree with a variety of policies that we implement. It's not a lot, by the way. It's a handful over the years. And, there's things on our end that we've seen, and there's things that I am like willing to accommodate and other things that I'm not willing to accommodate because human nature is pretty similar among people. And so I've just been around the block enough. I also know what our value and worth is. And there are things that I'm not willing to compromise on. And there are many things I am absolutely have tons of flexibility on. And so what does that really look like? And once again, that's going to vary a lot practice to practice. Some practices have one standard program. And that is it. One or two kind of standard programs, and you fit into one of those. And sometimes they'll advertise those. Sometimes you can sign up without even a call. Some places won't do a call, and you just have to sign up to work with them. And I think that's, if someone's like a very higher end practice, they are doing a lot of revenue, and or they are a micro practice who has done very well and they don't want to expand. I think those are kind of the two arenas that you're going to find that maybe won't do sometimes those kind of free discovery or free consultation kind of calls. A lot of practitioners I know in this space, and I've worked as a business mentor for practitioners similar backgrounds as me. Some of them get really fed up with these free calls, and trust me, I get it. I know. I also have a sales background, and I think little bit of a different background going into this. I know not everyone's going to show up for their free consultation call. I know not everyone's going to sign up for us. I know we're not the right fit for everyone. I know a lot of these things. And for me, as a business owner and also as a practitioner, I want to make sure that we're providing the right services for the right people. And so for me, having that upfront free call is really important and goes a long way. So oftentimes there's those calls, oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes. A lot of practices when you go in will require a lot of upfront testing. And that may look different depending on the issue, depending on the person, depending on the practice. I'll say blood work is pretty common among many functional health practitioners. I'll say, especially if you are working with a licensed practitioner, I'll say the vast majority of the time, they're starting with blood work. If you are working with someone who is unlicensed, and once again, we are an unlicensed practice, we also start with blood work. We all almost always want to see some blood work, whether that's from a doctor that you've seen, from us. It doesn't really matter, but ideally, we're typically going to look at some blood work. We can come up with a lot of answers via symptoms and health history, and we want to confirm on your labs and look at even just some basic things before we're diving into, okay, where are we starting? What are we doing? Like, what are all of these things? So a lot of places will start with labs. And once again, that might be, some people are just blood work. Some people are, if you're working with a quote unquote gut specialist, which I am also going to talk about that here a little bit more, they're probably going to run a stool test, maybe some blood work too. If you're working with a hormone specialist, they might run a Dutch test. They might run just blood work. They might run both. So, if you're seeing someone for, mold practices, a lot of mold practices will make you run some of these practices get pretty crazy. They'll have you run a mycotoxin test, an organic acids test, and a gut test of some sort, and likely an environmental test of some sort too. Which, once again, like some of these labs, you might spend, if they take insurance, it might be fairly inexpensive if they're just running blood work and they're really good at coding, which there are some really good people out there with that. The first person I ever worked with as a functional health practitioner was amazing at this. And so I got crazy amounts of labs done for so cheap. And it was such a blessing to have that. And really, like, now to be able to go back and look at all of that. And as I was going through my blood chemistry course, so valuable to go back and look at that. Some of these practices, you're going to pay $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, up to $5,000 on testing, which is a lot up front. And, typically what I'll see in these practices that are making you run, or requiring you to run a lot of these tests up front, what they're looking for is all of the things that are wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. It is very different from how we operate, but not wrong. I'll tell you, typically those kinds of practices or practitioners are going to do some strict elimination diets and put you on a bunch of supplements because they're going to micromanage every little thing that's wrong with you. They may do some muscle testing. They may not. They may just go based on the labs. They may do a combination of that. Anytime any symptom, reaction, or anything that comes up, they may put you on something else. Every time you see them, you feel like you're adding up on these supplements. Not uncommon, not all practices, once again, and pretty common. We see a lot of those people come to us. And kind of the biggest differences between that kind of practice and us, we're not looking for everything that's wrong. So we're not going to run food sensitivity testing. We're not running, extensive micronutrient testing. We're not running I don't need all of the blood work under the sun. I don't need to figure out everything that's wrong with you. I need to figure out what are the biggest things that are going on with you. And that's where we start. Because I know if we look at hormones first and just hormones, there's so many things that impact hormones. We're missing the ballpark here of, okay, hormones are a problem, but why? Why are your hormones a problem? I can give you a bunch of supplements to take. I can give you, lifestyle things, sleep cycling. Let's incorporate more foods that naturally increase progesterone, that help with estrogen metabolism, that can boost testosterone. We can look at all of these things. But why do you have hormone issues in the first place? What about the extreme stress you've been under for 2 years because of a new job that you took a few years ago, and it's incredibly stressful? What about the antibiotics you took a few years ago that really got rid of all the good stuff? And the bad stuff, but all the good stuff in your gut. And all of the supplements that you've been on that now your liver's really working overtime, maybe doesn't have the capacity to regulate your hormones. This stress piece. Stress decreases hormones across the board, increases cortisol, can decrease sleep. Maybe now you're holding on to some extra weight. Now maybe your thyroid is impacted here. And even like a lot of these practices that are working with hormone replacement therapy now, man, the number of women that I'm seeing put on thyroid medication with what I would consider pretty darn good thyroid numbers. And I, as someone with a history of not only hypothyroidism, but also autoimmunity that was attacking my thyroid, which is Hashimoto's, or one of the two big ones. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I know the thyroid's not really the problem. It really goes back to, okay, but why? I know, looking at the bigger picture, and once again, if I zoom out here and I'm looking at the bigger picture, well, your thyroid. Well, let's talk about your thyroid. So your TSH is produced in the brain, signal to the thyroid. Hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis, your HPT axis. Well, I also know your hypothalamus and pituitary also share an axis with your adrenals, HPA axis. So if we're under a lot of stress for a significant period of time, your adrenals are probably stressed, but so then is probably your thyroid. And why are we just putting you on thyroid meds instead of zooming out? I'm not saying thyroid meds are bad inherently, because they're not. They can be super helpful, super useful. But is that really the problem? And when we make the shift into perimenopause and our adrenals are already taxed going into this, and we are coming in from a high level of inside and probably outside stress, well, of course your adrenals are already taxed. Of course your thyroid is already showing signs of dysfunction. So if we just put someone on hormones and thyroid support, are we really supporting their bodies long term? That's a question for you to answer. For me, that's a hard no. And I personally, and just because I was symptom managed for so long, I would feel like a horrible person. And once again, like, some people do really well on that. Some people just give me the thing that'll fix it. I don't care if I have to take it forever. Just give me the thing. And that is totally, totally fine. And you should know your options and understanding around why and how this is happening. I see too many women come to us and they're like, oh yeah, I'm on thyroid meds. Okay. When did you go on thyroid meds? For what purpose? Oh, my doctor just put me on them when they put me on HRT. Having a mild stroke here. That infuriates me. I cannot stand that. That whole answer of, anytime I ask, why are you on something? There should be a real answer. And if a client is where you are this, why are we on this? Please ask me that question. Please ask one of our other practitioners. If you don't know the answer, please let us know, because I want you to know the answer. Now, I can explain that in plain English. Some people also want a more detailed, more scientific answer, which we are happy to provide. But also, some practitioners will only give you the very scientific answer, and you may not understand it, which is also a problem. I've worked with some incredibly, incredibly smart practitioners and doctors and different things in this space. Some of the smartest people are too deep in the weeds, trying to micromanage everything. And I did not see the benefit. When I was on over 30 supplements, I was going on years of restrictive diets, and my mental and emotional health was tanking. Things were not greatly improving. I needed a different pathway. And once again, we see a lot of clients come to us in that same kind of position. Once again, not right or wrong, just something to understand. So once again, some practices will do really extensive testing, trying to find everything. And once again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. For us, we are mindful of pricing. It's one of the big reasons why we don't upcharge for any testing. Any testing that anyone buys from us is at cost. You're going to pay what we pay. If we're paying, you're also going to pay a little bit of a processing fee if you're paying via card, just because that's what we get charged. Supplements. We try and pass on discounts on supplements across the board. Most practices make money off of testing and supplements. Full disclosure. Once again, nothing right or wrong. Just that is the reality of the situation. So just something to think about. So if there can be incentives, and once again, this is not the case for everyone, but there can be incentives for some practitioners to recommend a ton of supplements. Some practitioners truly believe that is the answer, and they themselves are on a bunch of supplements and find that to be super helpful. Some practitioners are also ride or die on elimination diets. And sometimes that's a specific one. I'll say paleo, autoimmune paleo, GAPS, the selective carbohydrate diet, Whole30. Those are some of the biggest ones that we'll often see. And there are a variety of others. Here's why we don't use those, by and large. Now, the exception might be like a low histamine or low oxalate diet for some of our mold clients, where we do need that kind of support from a symptom management perspective, because symptoms are so intense and so bad that while we're working on the bigger picture, while we're working on the mold, we need some additional support. And so doing some therapeutic style diets can be supportive, and they are only designed to be short term with us specifically. Once again, I was down to chicken, steak, excuse me, and white rice. It was no way to live. I mean, and that was about 3 years in to my journey, for reference. That was not right away. I slowly started restricting more and more and more and more because I wasn't getting better. And so all practitioners that I saw was like, okay, well, let's take this out. Well, let's take this out. Okay, we should do this diet now. And now we're going to do this diet. And it didn't help. So a big thing for us is not only do we want to help people heal, but the goal is long-term healing. And what that means is we need long-term habits that will support our healing. And when we do these restrictive diets without helping someone or without a very specific plan to reintroduce foods, usually we're left long-term with this diet. Think about SIBO. I was diagnosed with SIBO pretty early on. I did antibiotics for SIBO. I did all kind of supplement regimens for SIBO. I did low FODMAP for a long time. And then I got way more restrictive than just a low FODMAP diet. And I'll say it took me a long time to reintroduce garlic and onions, especially. It didn't work. It always came back. So if someone's like, I'm a SIBO specialist, you're going to take this protocol, here's the protocol, here's your diet, and then there's no real plan to reintroduce these foods, or anytime anyone reintroduces foods, they're reacting, it didn't work. Now, I'm not saying you should be able to eat a McDonald's cheeseburger and feel amazing afterwards, because the reality is no. None of us feel good after eating some of this fast food garbage. Doesn't mean you can't have it ever. And the reality is there are basic nutritional things that most people do well with. And that is going to look a little bit different person to person. But by and large, we all need protein. Protein is an essential nutrient. Plant, animal, doesn't really matter, but we need protein. We also need fat. And a lot of people don't get enough of one or both of those. So if we can help someone find a more overall, we'll say, balanced way of eating, where they are getting protein that they need, they are getting fat that they need. Most women need some sort of carbohydrates. Technically, we don't need fiber, although fiber is very supportive for our gut, for blood sugar regulation, for a variety of things. Lots of good nutrients in vegetables and fruits and different things like that. I don't think we need, by and large, I don't think we need to eliminate those. So if I can help support someone long term in eating a more balanced way and have a better understanding of how they feel eating certain things like breakfast, I'll tell you this. The number of women we work with who come in having coffee first thing in the morning to kind of get up, get going, and then, like chaos of a day. And they're barely eating, and then they overeat dinner and at night, or they're just like little snacks throughout the day. When we incorporate some sort of breakfast with some protein and usually some fat in there before they drink their coffee, it's a game changer. It sounds so silly, and I promise it is so true. Same thing goes with some basic mindfulness. The number of women, especially recently, we just got this feedback from a handful of women. We recommended a few minutes of deep breathing and or some guided breath work once a day, anywhere between 2 to 10 minutes, depending on the woman and where they were. The feedback we got within the first, week, let's say 2 weeks. Oh, I don't feel this heightened sense of nervousness all of the time inside of my body. Oh, I'm sleeping a little bit better. Oh, I feel like I'm able to make better decisions. Oh, I feel like my mood is just overall a little bit better for seemingly no reason. It's not no reason. We know this works. And we also know you don't need to meditate for an hour a day. Now, does meditating for an hour a day hurt anyone? I don't think it hurts most of us. And the reality is, the vast majority of us don't freaking have an hour to just sit there and meditate. And so many people think they meditate wrong too. By the way, there's no wrong way to meditate. It's really about just bringing anytime your mind starts to wander, it's about bringing those thoughts right back to you. The little things make such a big difference. And if we start small, we also know that it's really important. Almost every client, I'm talking 98+% of clients, are going to have some sort of failure or setback in the first 6 to 8 weeks. 100%. Almost 100%. I know that most women need a few wins right off the bat. And if they can incorporate a little bit of protein, if they can have a little bit more energy, their mood's a little bit better pretty quickly. I know that when they almost inevitably fail at some point or aren't quite on track, quote unquote, fall off the wagon, any one of these things, I know that if they've had a couple wins already and they've made a couple adjustments and they've done well on those, that gives them a lot more trust in themselves to get right back on. I also know that when they fail, when they quote unquote fall off the wagon and we get them back on, I know that's a huge learning point for them. And it starts to shift this mentality that so many of us have of all or nothing. And that is one of the most harmful patterns that all of us can run and also pass down to children. Because life isn't all or nothing. Life is not black and white. There is no one perfect way to live healthy, to live optimally, to do this. Things are going to happen. Pardon my language right here. Pause it if you don't like swearing. But shit's going to hit the fan for all of us at some point. Usually multiple times throughout our lives. I know for me, just last year was a year that what a wrench in unexpectedness. And if you don't know, my fiance was diagnosed with cancer at 34, super healthy person, and was diagnosed with cancer and had to go through aggressive treatment for it. And it was hard on him. It was hard on us. It was hard on me, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of the things. And I'm just now really back into a good spot. And he finished treatment last September. So we are 9 months past the end of his treatment. So Like, listen, it's going to happen to all of us. And if we have an all or nothing attitude and don't know how to support ourselves when things are in a decent spot, when things happen, stressors that we do not know of, if we can go back to some real basics and we don't have this all or nothing attitude and we can support our bodies, once again, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the best that we can, I know firsthand the value of that. And that is one of the things that we try and help incorporate, teach, whatever you want to call it, when we're working with clients. And a lot of times we don't even talk. We just go through it. And that's a big reason why. And if someone's only tools are, you have to go on this restrictive diet to feel really good, and you have to be on all of these supplements to feel really good, man, that is so discouraging. It's tough. It's to keep track of. I mean, man, I was on over 30 supplements at any given time. I've had women come in. I recently, in the last handful of months, had someone come in working with the same person that I worked with, my very first person. And the number of supplements she was on, I mean, she was on more than me at my highest point. And it breaks my heart. I mean, it's like a full-time job to keep track of all of these supplements and what you can and cannot eat. I also know, and I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of these women as well, that they try and follow all the rules. I need to eat this for my body because I am going to throw out a couple random things that I have not heard and a few things that I have heard on purpose here because I don't want to shame any one area because listen, there's a lot of things, things that you should eat because of your blood type, things that you should and should not eat because of your age, the fact that you are a woman, the fact that you are a Sagittarius, the fact that your human design is a generator, that you lean more towards a like high level of chi in your body, that you lean more on the hot side, so you need to eat mostly cold foods or vice versa. There are all these rules depending on whether you're looking at functional medicine, at certain types of functional medicine, at certain types of books, that you should fast, you should not fast, you should only fast at dinner. Oh no, you should only fast at breakfast, you shouldn't eat until this time. You can eat this, the men, women, that. Oh my gosh, there are so many rules. People like rules too. Life does not play by the rules, from my experience. So when we get so caught up in these rules, a lot of times it's so overwhelming for us to keep track of and can be very overwhelming for our brains. And it's, all right, strawberries are good. They're healthy. Okay, but now that if I eat too many strawberries, they're high in histamine, so I shouldn't eat high histamine. And they're a cold food, so I shouldn't eat. Oh my goodness. So many rules. Let go of the rules. Just throw them away. Learn how to listen to your own body. And this takes time, this takes practice. There is no fun test that I can recommend. Even I cannot recommend $1,000 test that just gives you the answer to all the rules. And we love rules. We need to work on our mindset. We need to work on our nervous system. We need to let some of these rules go. And a lot of functional health practices like to follow the rules too. And that's fine. If you like rules and want to be restrictive and on a bunch of stuff for an extended period of time, potentially for the rest of your life, go for it. Once again, there is no judgment. And I will tell you, it's going to catch up with you at some point. Some practices do, live blood tracking. It will tell you all the things, or bioresonance scans, or muscle testing. Look, all of these things have value. I also don't think any of them are perfect. I've seen blood tests run wrong, and then we rerun them, and it's a totally different picture. I've seen, and once again, there's a lot of value in testing. There's also a lot of value in symptoms. Do I also think that we should just look at symptoms and health history? Also, no. I do think testing is valuable. I also think when and how we do that plays a really big role. I do also think looking at the big picture and kind of working our way in is really valuable. I also know a lot of practices and a lot of individuals, and I respect certain individuals who have done this and who talk about this, where it's all nervous system. Oh, I just need to work on my nervous system. Well, listen, I agree. The nervous system's a huge piece of this. I also know a lot of the people where they have done the nervous system work. They've done energy work. They've done body code, emotion code. They've done biotuning, EMDR, psychedelic. You name the tool. I know people who have healed from those. I can also tell you that sometimes it was short term. A lot of the time, they had already had all of the other basics in place. And that was the missing piece. And I think that's a really important piece to understand as well, that, for us, we look at 5 areas. We look at nutrition, lifestyle, movement, nervous system, and targeted and limited supplementation for the bigger root causes that we see. Supplements are not meant to be designed forever. We love a good multivitamin forever. If you don't have a gallbladder, you gotta be on gallbladder support forever. If you have certain other things, yeah, we may need other things, but I'll tell you, by and large, we don't need a lot of these other things. But it depends on the person. The nervous system piece is non-negotiable. So if you only look at the nervous system, I think it's a huge discredit to the rest. Here's the thing. Especially if we're looking on the trauma side of things, your liver processes out all of that. And if you're not supporting the processing of the emotions, you can bring them up, you can feel them, but you still have to process them. And that oftentimes requires additional support. I also know that if you have mold, if you have parasite overgrowth, general gut overgrowth, if you've got leaky brain, if you've got a ton of nutrient deficiencies, I also know that those all dysregulate your nervous system too. Which is why we don't just look at the nervous system. We don't just look at the trauma healing aspect. That's also when you're never done with that kind of side of things, in my opinion, from my experience at least. Some practices only focus on that, some don't look at it at all. And I think it's a huge disservice if they don't look at it at all. But once again, not everyone's ready to look at that side of things. As I've shared before, the nervous system, the trauma healing piece, there's a lot of different ways to do this. And the deeper you go, especially from a trauma healing standpoint, looking at your patterns, shifting patterns, doing all of that kind of work, it's the hardest work. Not everyone is up for it. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery. It can be very lonely. It can be very isolating. You end up oftentimes making a lot of shifts in your life that can make it even more lonely and isolating. And that is the reality of that side of the work, oftentimes part of the process. And you end up being able to find deeper relationships that actually fill you up, light you up, bring you life instead of stressing you out. Friendships with other women who are in the healing space are unlike any other relationships I've ever seen, personally and professionally. Game changer. They're not easy to find though. So, once again, like some people end up getting divorced, some people breaking off friendships, some people reevaluate the relationships with their family. And once again, not everyone wants to do that. And once again, that is okay. Just different things to kind of think about. Some people go heavily into movement. Some people, just go for a walk here and there, or just go do your HIIT workouts, or just go do your yoga or Pilates. Or movement is extremely important for our long-term health. There's also no one way to do that either, in my opinion. And for some people, yeah, we need to get their bodies moving a little bit more. And some bodies aren't really ready for that. They're too depleted, they're too stressed out, and even doing a 5-minute walk may be too much. So what does that look like for them? Well, maybe that looks like some really gentle somatic movements or some gentle stretching in a bed. on the floor. Maybe that means pulling back from someone's current workouts. Are group workouts the best? No. Blanket statement, no, in my experience and opinion. And I also know that if someone loves group workouts and that community and it helps them show up and helps them move their body, is it the best for them? It might be. And it may be more beneficial to do it that way than what I would consider, quote unquote, the absolute best way to work out for their body. There is no one way to do this. And a lot of practitioners will argue that there is. And so once again, just things to think about when you're in this space. Also think about, a lot of people will give you the same protocols, whether that's nutrition, supplements, all that kind of stuff, lifestyle things. Now, with us, yeah, there are some similarities between a lot of us. We're going to recommend protein intake for a lot of people, and most people, especially women, are not eating enough. So we're going to talk a lot about that. Basic lifestyle things: chew your food. Don't chug water with your meals. Try and eat in a relaxed state. Drainage pathways, hugely important. That is where we start with most people. And especially with certain types of clientele, that's going to look pretty similar. Now, for our more complex, chronic, advanced cases, it often looks totally different. But a lot of our other clients don't see that, which is okay. So some protocols, yeah, do look the same. Are they the same for everyone? No. And yeah, we do work with a lot of people working on drainage pathways, looking at gut support and different kinds of gut issues, in which case, yeah, some of those protocols are similar. Not the same, similar. And so we need to think about that. But some people really do go the exact same. All right, this is your protocol. This is what you're doing for 6 weeks. After those 6 weeks, this is what you're doing next. Once again, your call, your decision. But just think about that. If they give you like a packet on like exactly what you're going to be doing, a lot of times it's the same. Not for everyone, but a lot of times it is the same. Like we have a new client kind of packet. It's over 80 pages at this point. And it's basics. And it's a lot of things like that we reference of like, oh, we're going to talk about mindfulness. Why don't you try some breath work or deep breathing? There are some resources in this resource manual. Oh, you're going to do a castor oil pack. All right. Well, we have some more detailed information. So it's just like compiled information versus like, all right, this is your diet for the next 6 weeks. And then this is how you're going to start reintroducing foods. And then you're going to start with these supplements and then go to these supplements and then go to these supplements. And so just once again, just ask questions, ask a lot of questions, feel into it, trust your gut. I also want to talk about retesting and communication kind of practices. So some practices do a lot of retesting. Every 6 weeks, they're running blood work. Every 3 months, they're running a stool test or, HTMA or whatever it might be, which is fine. Also, is your practitioner trained in just that test? Or are they trained in a variety of testing? What are the pros and cons of that testing? Super, super important. All testing has pros and cons, even blood work. So important to understand the pros and cons. Sometimes we retest very specific things, sometimes we don't. We're always running labs at some point in time, like blood work labs for clients at some point in time, when it can vary for sure, depending on the person. What are we actually running? Also depends. When we work with mold clients, sometimes we run the organic acids test right up front. Sometimes it's the mycotoxin test. Sometimes it's both. Are we rerunning both? Sometimes. It depends on the person. A lot of this depends on symptoms. How is someone feeling? What does their blood work look like? What did their blood work look like previously? What did their first test look like? What improvements or lack thereof have we seen thus far? And where do we need to reassess? What does someone's financial situation look like? Do they have an extra $1,000 to spend on both a mycotoxin test and an organic acids test again? What information, what are the pros and cons of running the testing versus not running the testing? And by the way, this is the conversation that we have with a lot of our clients of, hey, this is ideally what we'd like to do. Here are the pros and cons. Here's the cost. Where are you landing? What questions do you have? And let's come up with a game plan together that is going to make sure we get the information that we need, but also not push you in a worse spot, whether that's physically and or financially. Because financial health is also a big piece of this. And I'm working on having someone on the podcast, a few different people on the podcast to talk about financial health. I would not consider this an area of expertise of mine on the financial side. Sure, I know certain things, and I know my knowledge is very limited in that space, and so I wanna have some people who, like, that is their livelihood on here, and there's a few people we're working on to get on the podcast to talk about this. This is a huge piece of our health as well, just like our spiritual health, our energetic health, our mental health, our emotional health, our relationship health, both within ourselves, our relationship to ourselves, which for a lot of women is some of the most toxic relationships that they're in, but also your relationships with your family, a significant other, your children, friends, family, like all that stuff really plays a big role into this. And so we want to know, you know, another big piece of this is how often are you meeting with your practitioner? Are you meeting with your practitioner once a month, once every 6 weeks, once every 2 months as needed, once every other week? What does it really look like? We are a high touch practice, meaning that we see almost all of our clients either weekly or bi-weekly for the first 3 to 6 months. That was intentional. Accountability is a really big piece. We also work on peeling back a lot of layers. And to peel back a lot of layers, we need to really get to know someone. And meeting with someone super regularly helps us do that. And so we start to see different trends, different things start to come up. We can ask deeper questions about how does someone talk to themselves? What do they think? How do they think? What are their relationships like with other people in their lives, with work, with family, with friends, with alcohol, with what coping mechanisms do they have or lack thereof? All of that kind of stuff. Because once again, we are looking more long term. We're not trying to just help someone heal. Yeah, we want to help people heal. And even more importantly, we want to help them stay healed and continue to heal as they go through their lives so that they can feel good. They can feel the best that they absolutely can. And there's a lot of different levels to that. There's a lot of ways to do that. And so, once again, what's important to you? Do you just want supplements and a diet plan? That's fine if that's what you want. If there's a lot of things going on in your body, there's usually a lot of things going on in the other areas of your life as well. And it can be very helpful to look at all of these things. And no, we are not therapists. Yes, we are very trauma informed. And we have a lot of different areas of specialties, expertise, both in coaching, functional health, labs, nutrition, but also the mental and emotional space. And that's what I think that's a big thing that sets us apart from a lot of practices. So just once again, what are you looking for? What is this really looking like? And I also think this is a reason why a lot of people end up working with us for a good chunk of time. Some people only work with us for, 3 to 5 months. Others work with us for several years. And I'll tell you, like a lot of my personal clients that have been with me for longer terms, it's not so much the supplements and nutrition and some of these things. And yeah, we absolutely continue to look at those things, but it's more the most mental and emotional space and the fact that we have gotten to know them and we're able to share different thoughts and make recommendations on different tools and techniques that may feel supportive in navigating different times of their lives and different things and all that kind of stuff. And I think that says a lot about a lot of the work that we do. And we're going to refer you out when it's appropriate. We're not afraid to be like, you know what? I don't know. I am not the right person for that, or I know a little bit, and I think you should go see someone who is more well versed in whatever area that might be. And once again, not all practitioners will do that. New and not so new. And there can be real egos in this space as with any other space. And so I just, once again, things to think about. How much support do you want? Same thing with communication. How much communication do you want? I've worked with practitioners where, man, it is sending multiple emails over the course of a week to get a couple line response 2 weeks later. I've also worked with practitioners who were super immediate. I've worked with a lot of things in between. For us, we're a pretty high touch point practice. So we try and be pretty on top of communication. Are we perfect? No. Are we going to get back to you right away? Depends on the day, depends on the question. I know for me personally, if it's a really short question and it's, especially via email for me, yeah, I'm going to be able to look at that pretty quickly and then send you a quick response. For more detailed questions, it's going to take me some time. Sometimes I need to think about it. Sometimes I need to sit on it. And for me, that's kind of twofold. One, I want to make sure I give you a good answer. Two, I want to make sure I have the time and space to give you a good answer. But three, sometimes I need some time to process the questions so I can give an appropriate answer. Sometimes it brings something up in me that I need to process for myself. And I don't want to take it out on someone else. And I have that level of self-awareness in that. And anytime for whatever reason, and sometimes this is just the day I've had, if I'm already a little on edge and then someone sends me an email, it might set me over the edge. And I'm like, I just need some space. I need to sleep on it before I give an answer. And then I wake up the next day and I have an easy answer for whatever the questions were. And sometimes I just need that kind of time and space. So I also think it's important for you, how much communication do you want from the practice? Do you want a high level of communication? Does it not matter so much? Can you wait a week? Do you want an answer within a couple hours or a couple days? Like we don't allow texting in our practice. And that's largely because I did that at the very beginning and got burned really hard. Really, really, really hard. It's also why we don't do phone calls. Just the number of phone calls and text messages, was out of control and was interfering with my own personal life. And it was not good for my health. So, once again, just like think about what you're looking for, what kind of help you want, all that kind of stuff. So those are the big things that I kind of had on my list kind of here. I'll also say just kind of one other thing about onboarding. Some practices have a super long wait list. Some can get you in pretty quickly. A lot of it depends on the practice. For me, I think it's very important that we onboard individuals pretty quickly. And by pretty quickly, I mean within a couple weeks. So I make sure or do my best to make sure that we have the capacity to do that between my schedule and then our two other practitioners, Brendan and Caitlin. I make sure between the three of us, someone's going to be open in within a 2-week period, ideally, unless there's something like super weird going on between schedules, whether that's on our end or the client's end, to be able to get them onboarded. And once again, I think that's a really important piece here. So once again, just think about like how quickly do you want to onboard? Some people can get you in really quickly. Some people need a few days. For us, like we do some intake paperwork, so we need at least a few days so that you can fill out the paperwork and then we can review the paperwork before we dive in and get started. So all of those things kind of matter. So once again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. As a client, as a patient, as a practitioner, it's about what's important for you. So if you are looking to work with someone, maybe a really good first step is think about what is important to you. And maybe you didn't think about a lot of these things that I talked about in this episode, and sit on those. So sit on those and think about what is important to you, what is valuable, what are some things more important than others, and maybe think about that as you are shopping around and kind of looking at some different practices and different people to work with on really what you are looking for. What do you want? What kind of support do you want? Do you want something that's super test heavy, super supplement heavy that, wants to give you a bunch of rules because you like rules and that makes you feel really good? Something that's going to be a little bit more nervous system based versus everything else. Something that's a little bit more everything else based and not so nervous system based. All of those things. Just really think about what might feel most supportive for you and then trust your gut. If it doesn't feel good, it's probably not. And we're not right for everyone. Every other practice out there, it's not right for everyone else. Different people are right for different people, depending on where you are in your journey and a whole bunch of other factors. So really think about that. So I think that's where I'm going to wrap up. If you guys have any questions or want me to dive deeper into any kind of specific aspects around that, send us a comment, DM, email, whatever feels best for you. If you are interested in talking to us and potentially wanting to work with us, we do offer free consultations like I've shared. There's always a link below in the caption and or show notes, depending on where you are watching and or listening to this. And as always, please like, subscribe, follow. If it resonates, 5-star reviews really, really, really do mean the world to us. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.